we're gonna wind up snipping away that clip lock where I made those marks, and then we'll score across the back fold and snap it off. So, yep. And again, if you want to keep, that's our actual mark, so if you want to keep it a little bit wider so we have more room to get through there, that's okay. So when we get to running the panels and we tuck the panel into the valley metal, how far are we going to cut back those clip locks? 4 inches. Top and bottom, right? Now as you develop your crews that are going to install this, just like with anything else, the more you do something, the easier it gets and the faster you get and the cleaner everything's going to work. So it's always good if you can have certain members of your crew sort of specialize in one aspect or the other. So it's a good idea to get maybe one guy that can focus on going out in front and laying some of this trim work, as the other 2 or 3 guys on the crew are getting ladders and things set up and tarps and cutting stations and extension cords and all that good stuff. You got to get your favorite radio station on. Testing out the coffee, making sure it's the right temperature. But one guy can jump out in front and start working on that stuff while the other guys are getting everything else set up. And then hopefully within a half hour or so time, you've got an area where somebody can start laying panels and chasing back up behind them with a ground guy feeding them. Now, it's always going to be a good idea to have whoever's going to be installing the panels and the guy who's going to be cutting panels on the same page as far as where they're pulling measurements from. So when we go to start laying panels, basically the 2 factory ends on the Shingle XD system, these top clip locks are going to butt into one another. Okay, so some guys when they're pulling measurements, they'll pull, and we're going to be running this way. So if they're coming into a hip, you know, they'll pull a measurement from the hip to this clip lock and say 7 inches on the top, factory left, 22 inches on the bottom, factory left. So you want to be in good communication and make sure you're working off of the same spot. Other guys will take into account the overlap and pull from that measurement. So when the ground guy's actually pulling, instead of pulling from here, he'll pull his tape from the outside edge. So just make sure you're all measuring from the same spot. Yeah, I mean, if you don't have the shear tool, and the shear tool is not going to work for the valley metal. It'll be too much. It even has a tough time getting through the step ups in the course. You got to give it a little extra muscle. But for my money, what I like to have on a job site with these products is a table saw, like a portable table saw. Yeah. It's safe because it gives you a nice platform to, you know, whether you cut through the nose first or the top first, kind of doesn't matter. But it just gives you a nice platform to be able to put the material on. You're working at about waist height, or wherever you feel comfortable. You got your guard on there, and it's just nice and easy to push these panels. If you're doing a valley cut, you can push it right through. Whereas if you're working with a circular saw, you know, hopefully you've got a cutting station set up, but a lot of guys wind up putting it on their leg and balancing and doing all that stuff. Dangerous. The one thing to keep in mind when we're making cuts like on our hips or going into our valleys or our rakes, it doesn't have to be super duper clean because it's going to be tucked into a channel and hidden. So if it's a little deformed, it's really not a big deal because it's getting hidden up anyway. You know, we're going to cut it on this side randomly. We're going to keep our factory right ends to get our starter going. So our cut edge over here is going to be either coming out of a valley or coming out of a rake channel or coming out of something.